So once you get the mock-up off the mold, you know, you make the form here, and this is just the form. The next step is to actually get some shape into this gear. It came off the form, it was just basically squared up. Now what I'm trying to do here is get some airfoil in it. It's got a coarse and a fine. Now some of these parts here you're going to have to actually get a sandpaper and a dowel. Your legs are where they need to be, right here. Some of this you just have to do by eye. Another thing you can do as you're blending this in, you can see where it's flat here, and then the blend starts to come in, so you're looking for symmetry here between the right and left. I've added a little bit right here, right in here, put a little bit more carbon there. Usually that's the weak spot, right in here. So I guess it's sort of a leaf spring effect. In a sense, it's a little bit stiffer here, but right out here is where the shock absorption is. This part is really critical because that's what's going to attach to the plane. Everything's going to be indexed off of the bottom of this plate here. I'm following the contour of this mold, and you can always put this back on there to make sure, you know, you're getting the symmetry you want. And that's double checking it. This buck is set up to where it's parallel here. This is 90 degrees to the arms. So I got pretty close. I still need to do a little pinhole filling, but it's time now to actually get the downward legs cut. So I marked one of them, and I'll come in here and get them laid out, get them cut. So I already marked my line here. I just sort of eyeball it, set it up there. You want maybe a 1/4 inch on each side. Stainless steel straight edge here. I got this at Metal Supermarket. This was in the scrap bin. They've got a metal shear in there that super accurate. So for our purposes, you got a nice straight edge. Now, what I try to do is get a X-Acto blade that it's not brand new, but it's got a little bit of a point on it. And I'll flip it over. So instead of cutting with the blade in, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to scrape it and score it. It's alright. I mean, the little tip broke off there, but that's okay. All you're doing is scratching a groove in the Formica. And of course, if you get little burrs on it or whatever, you know, just take a file. I don't know if it's obvious or not, but basically what I did is I I filed a burr into that tip there. Now, this Formica backing, it doesn't have to sit perfect here, flush with the gear, because what you're going to do, once you get this formed up, you're going to actually put a clay draft angle underneath this carbon here. So I got the draft angle set. The blade is what I use to get the draft angle here. I just grind an angle in the blade, round it off so it's not sharp, scrape that around the perimeter, and then I put a little bit of wax on top of it right here. Try not to disturb the clay. And what I had to do on some of this clay, it got a little crumbly and old maybe, but I put some of the wax into the clay. So don't be afraid to mix a little wax in the clay. Makes it easier to smooth out. So right now, with the clay on there and some wax, I'm ready for some PVA. You can custom grind these things any draft angle you want here. So here's a shot of the first part of the mold. Now this has got the surface coat in it. Using Resin Services HSC 302X. And the surface coat hardener is a 302, 12% per hundredweight. And that's in this jug right here. Now the casting is going to be made of a high temp casting material. It's HAC 560. Now the curing agent for the 560 is going to be a 9234. So what we got here, 15% per hundredweight. 9234 is good for a casting like 2 inches thick. That's what I got going on here with this mold. These two curing agents here, they're for different castings. Now one of these is for a thinner casting like 1 inch, and one of them's for up to like 7 inches. You'd have to look at the spec sheet to figure out what's what, but I'm going to go with the 9234. So even though this is more than 2 inches in this direction, I'm still basing it on the width of it here. So you can see where I brushed in a surface coat. Cures and gels pretty quick. So if you have little gaps down here where the Lexan meets this form, it might seep out a little bit, but it's cures pretty quick. So that gives me a working scale without the container. So I tared the container. So from this point, I'm going to pour in 88 ounces. Probably go with 80 ounces since 88 is pretty much the amount I needed with the curing agent. So it's pretty simple up to now. This 1/4 inch Lexan sheet has been waxed. This form's been waxed. The form with the gear clayed up, that's PVA'd, and then surface coat. And light clamp pressure. You don't need to put enough pressure here to distort anything. These little clamps here hold the upper part. I use the heavier clamps down here, which stabilizes it. It acts not only as a clamp, but the bigger clamps act as a base to the whole pour. So 79.8, we're going to go 15%. It gets us up to 91.77. See if I can get this in there without splashing it everywhere. Is I've taken this metal rod and I put a radius on it right here, which matches the inside of the jug, so I can scrape on the corners here. So I'm going to start with the sides. So by scraping the sides initially, I'm allowing the curing agent to work down the side of the container. Laminating resin. You've got to work this curing agent into all the filler, around the filler. And the way this product works, you're going to see streaks of the curing agent. So you can sort of visually tell where you're at as far as the mix ratio, the mix where you're at. And I like the hand mix. That way it keeps as much air out of it as possible. That way I don't end up wearing this stuff. Now I weighed one of my molds previous to pouring this bottom half. That's how I determined how much I needed. Now this top half, I'm just guessing. I probably should have weighed the existing mold I had before. It was similar. So if this comes out the way I think it will, there'll be a total of 1 gallon of resin for this one mold. Yeah, I probably have too much. So that brings me to the top. Now what'll happen, and this stuff cures, it'll shrink, air bubbles will come up and you'll get a little bit of shrinkage. Once this thing goes to room temp and cures for 24 hours, then I'll demold it, and then we'll actually heat cure it. Still needs a post cure. And one day at room temp, and then put it in the hot box, the warmer at about 110, right around in there. So we'll open this up. So all this forming here was to form the top part. This bottom part was already formed up. And this is the end product that comes out of these molds. It's a 100% carbon gear. So this is the finished mold minus the high temp post cure. Now this plastic Lexan, it looks like it's I don't know, 3/8. I'm sure it's metric, but it's not half and it's not quarter. So we'll just say 3/8. So the only thing I had on this plastic was wax. I used a car wax on it just to see how it worked. And it looks like it did okay. Might have been a little etching here from the surface coat. Surface coat might have been a little reactive. I'll see if that cleans off. They have a coat of PVA in them, on them. So the advantages of having it sort of flexible, it allows you to bend it off of the mold by flexing it. And obviously being clear, you can see the release happening. This just had a coat of wax on it also. So what I like to do, I'll do it now, is go in there with a file and get some of this flashing off. PVA, the green stuff, I've had pretty good luck up to about 130, 140. This stuff here should go for the higher temp. And you can see right off the bat, you know, instead of being green, it has a green tint on the old PVA, the low temp. This has got like a purple look to it. So I don't have a gun set up to actually spray this stuff. I could get one going, but I thought, well, for this mold here, I'm just going to brush it. So what I've got on this mold right now, I post-cured it with Free Coat 700 NC, and I post-cured this to about 300, a little on 290, 280. And then what I've done, I coated a couple coats of this Partol high temp wax. Now on this wax, it says back here, it's sort of funny, it talks about keep away from heat. It's sort of funny. But anyway, obviously you don't want to heat this wax up. It's got petroleum distillates in it, but once you get it on the mold, you can actually, you know, go high temp with it. So I'm going to attempt to brush this stuff on here. Now this brush I got, it's not too stiff, it's not too soft, it's about right for PVA. So my PVA brush, I always use this little brush, artist brush. Because once you brush it on and you get it on there, forget about it. I mean, if you keep going back over it trying to smooth it out, you just make it worse. So try to get a nice film on there as quick as you can. A lot of that will dissipate or shrink down. It won't be as bad as it looks now. And then once I get this part all PVA in there, I'll go back and I'll put a gel coat in this mold to where the surface of the gear will have a real thin skim coat. And I put PVA here on the this part of the mold. Now I've done this resin before, the high temp, and I've never had any trouble with that first mold I did. It was no PVA, I just used free coat, and the part released without anything but free coat. But for some reason I just didn't feel quite as brave. So I guess if you don't want to risk it. Well, I got the mold out of the oven. Got her warmed up here. $75. Once I get it in the mold, it'll probably become a little bit more easier to wet out. So hopefully what's going to happen when I get this in the mold, it'll take on a different characteristic. Hopefully it'll shed some air bubbles and properties I wanted. So when it comes time to trimming these ends here exact, I'll be able to fine tune down there. The main thing is you just don't want to cut them too short. Now, if it starts to get a little, seems like too much resin where it's floating around on you, let's go ahead and blot it up a little bit. Now, when it gets to this stage, you're doing the guessing game. You're sort of looking at this toe, trying to figure out how much more you need. Now it's obvious down here I need more. I need more in the center. So I'm going to actually cut another piece full length. And when you tighten these clamps, it's one of these things where you'll tighten them and then you'll go back a few minutes later and tighten them some more. What'll happen, you'll get squeeze out and the mold will close up a little bit. And you can just add more of that carbon you just snipped off, stick it back in there. It'll wash out if it doesn't need it. The little aluminum plates I made up are used for capping off the ends here. It'll become a little bit more stable. Try to keep them tight enough to where they're not going to shift on me now. And there's just one clamp on the ends here. That's all I ever use. Let's see what I got on here. Once you get it clamped and the parting line looks good, obviously you're not going to gain anything by over squeezing it. Once it's closed, it's closed. So that looks good. I've got the end plates aligned, everything's tight. I got my parting line looking good. It's right in here. And let's see what we're dealing with here. So we just laid it up at 100 degrees, 101. So that's good. I like to keep a little heat in it. There's probably some heat buildup in the part too, so it might be a little bit warmer inside.